Welcome everybody back to Photoshop. Today we're going to be working through the book and we're going to begin in chapter 1, lesson 1. It's getting to know the work area. So hopefully by now you've gotten your book. The book that we're using is the Adobe Photoshop Classroom in a Book version 2021. Inside the beginning of the book, there is a place that you can find out how to get the files that we're working with. So if you go right to the beginning, it'll tell you how to get to the Adobe Press. You'll go to www.adobepress.com/Photoshop CIB 2021, and that is on page 3 with Roman numerals, and it'll tell you exactly how to get your files. These files are going to be important as we move forward. We'll be working with these files, so you're going to want to make sure that you get those downloaded. Okay, so I have already downloaded these files. If you look over here, I have them in my digital skills folder, and I showed you before we're in unit 1, but right before that we have this Photoshop CC 2021. If you double click on that, you'll find all of our lessons. So today we're going to be working on lesson 1, and as you open it up, you'll see that there are two files. We have an O1 end and an O1 start. Now, what this book does is it kind of helps us by showing us the end process. So I'm just going to hit the space bar and you'll be able to see what we're kind of working towards. So we're working towards a photo that has a happy birthday banner on there and then a name banner. Now for this project, we're going to use our own name for here. But let's go ahead and jump right into it. So this book has it to where we already have a file ready to roll. So I'm just going to double click on it, and Photoshop already knows to open it. So as you guys are probably familiar with now, we have our Photoshop inside here. We have our tools panel right over here. On the top here we have, since we have our brush selected, we have our brush over here. And then to the side here we have our layers. Now if we look over here, we have our rose layer, which is, of course, this rose. And if you hit the little eyeball there, you'll see it has a ribbons layer. So we're just going to follow along in the book, and I'm going to be working through it with you. Now, one of the first things that it wants you to do is it wants you to save it as something different. So right now it's saved as O1 Start PSD. So what we're going to do is we're going to go File, Save As, and this saves it as a different document. And we're going to call it O1 Working. And I'm going to go ahead and save it in the same file that it's already in. And we're going to hit save. Now, if you look through the book, there are a lot of great opportunities to find some really great information. I'm not always going to go through all of the information. What I expect is that as you're going through doing your own project, that you will read through all of the pieces and find all the tools. Some of the tools that it's talking about is using our handy dandy space bar to move it around, using the zoom tool over here to zoom in and out, or you can hit Z. It's also talking about, if you go into zoom, using the scrubby zoom, if you take that off, then you can either select a spot, or if you turn it on, as you move your mouse, it'll move your picture in and out. It's left and right. So we're going to fit to screen. In the book, it's asking us to take off the scrubby zoom and click in. And we can use our handy dandy hand to move it around. All right, I'm going to go back and fit it to the screen. Those are some very helpful tools. So the first thing that it wants us to do, it wants us to make sure that the rows, we're going to go ahead and first thing what we're going to do is brighten up this photo. So it's wanting us to go to the rows layer and make sure that it's selected. And then in the adjustments panel, which is right up here, it wants us to hit the brightness and contrast icon. And what it's wanting to do is to add some brightness and contrast. Now in this, it has some very specific numbers that it wants you to hit. So I think the brightness is wanting to go up to about 98. And the contrast is going to about 18. Yeah, that looks great. So, and what you can do at this point is you can come over here into your layers panel and you can turn off the eyeball to see the big difference. That's a pretty nice difference. Now what I'm going to do, because I'm having a hard time seeing it right there, I'm going to move these around just a little bit so that, there we go, so that we can see it a little bit better. That's the wonderful thing about this, is that you can move things around to work for you. I am pretty used to working with Photoshop in a certain way, and so when it's not that way, I sometimes just have to work on fixing it up. I'm going to reset the essentials. There we go. That's how we know how to do it. Okay. So again, the adjustment layers, like I've said before, they help change the photo from the bottom up. Okay, so then the next part that it wants us to do is it wants us to learn how to sample colors. So if we go ahead and go to the ribbons layer right here and we turn it on, we can see that we have a nice happy birthday banner. And so what the book wants us to do is to go and collect our eyedropper tool. There it is. Again, it's not where I'm used to seeing it. So we're going to collect our eyedropper tool, and the color that it wants us to pick is right here in the happy birthday banner. Now one thing that you'll notice is that this banner has some effect on it, it has some texture on it. So depending on where you click is going to be which color is going to be. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit just to show you. And I like the scrubby zoom, so that's what we're going to use. So if you look over here, if we click here, oh, Well, look at that. That color is actually white. And the reason being is because I right now have the brightness contrast layer highlighted and selected. What I want to do is I want to get this color from the ribbons layer. So we're going to click on that and select that. That's a very important piece to remember. It's making sure that you're working on the right layer. And this happens a lot. Okay, so if I click over here, that's going to be a different blue than here. And if you kind of click and hold, you can see what color there is. You can even go in here and get yellow. But really just depending on where you click is what the color is going to be. So I think I kind of like the darker blue. So that's the color that I'm going to pick. All right, I'm going to go ahead and zoom out. So if you look over here, you'll notice that that color is selected, and this is the top color, so that's the color that you're going to be working with. Okay, so the next thing that this book wants us to do is to set the unit of measure. This is really important when you go to kind of creating boxes and shapes and different things. It helps you really be able to put the exact measurement on there. The book does walk you through going through edit and preferences. My favorite way to do it is to go into Photoshop and go into settings and hit general. And what that's going to do is it's going to bring up your preferences panel. So in here you can choose different things. There's general, there's interface. You can choose the color theme that you want for your workspace. You can choose how it lays out. You can choose how your workplace looks, your tools, what tools you want to show. But what we're going to click on today is this units and rulers. And from the units and rulers, we're going to choose inches. We're not going to worry about changing this part over here. We're just going to worry about changing this part over here. So after you change that to inches, we're going to leave our type at points. We're going to hit OK. Okay, so the next thing the book is asking us to do is to create a rectangle. So we're going to make sure that we're selected here on the ribbons panel. And we are going to come up here, we're going to choose the rectangle tool, which is this one right here. Now, what it wants us to do is make a box that is 2.5 inches wide and 0.75 inches high. So I'm just going to start here in the middle because once we make it, we can actually move it. So we're going to go 0.25 wide and 0.75 high. Okay, now if you notice, we have these marching ants going around. Now that becomes a selection. Now in this selection, you can put things that won't affect the rest of your photo. So what we're gonna do is, if you notice, if I put this over here, it becomes the marquee tool again. But if we put it right next to it, it changes and it now becomes a move tool that we can move it around. So we're going to go ahead and place this, and I think it's asking us to place it right about here. So we're going to place it right about there. So then the next thing it wants us to do is it wants us to fill this in with a color. So we've already used the color picker to pick our color. So we're going to click on our brush tool. And right now we have it as a mixer brush tool. We're just going to use the regular brush tool. We're going to make sure we have our blue selected, and we do. And then what it wants us to do is it's asking us to open up the brush panel. So there's a couple of different ways you can do that. In the book, it'll walk you through some. My most favorite way is just to click the little arrow right over here, and it'll take you right where you need to go. So the book wants us to use a soft round brush. So we have a soft round brush right here. And if you notice, you can change the size over here. And also, as you change the size, you'll notice that the size changes here too. And you can also change the hardness. But for this purpose, we're just going to leave it as soft round. And it wants us to use it at 32 pixels. So with it selected, we are going to go ahead and begin to color in this square. Now, the really cool thing about having a selection is that it pretty much, it keeps everything in that corner, and it's not gonna go out of the box. So I'm just gonna continue to kind of color that in and make sure it's fully colored. And once it's all done, then we're just gonna leave it. Now, the great thing, if you notice here, we still have this on the ribbons layer. So we want to make sure that the ribbons layer is the one that's highlighted, because if you have it on the rose layer, it's gonna color in your rose. So the next thing we want to do is, at this point, we can't do much of anything else on this because we have these marching ants over here. So we're going to deselect. Photoshop has this great little toolbar right here. And so we're just going to hit deselect. Another way you can do that is to go over here to select and hit deselect. And if you notice, there are shortcuts over here, and if you learn these shortcuts, they make life a lot easier and faster. Okay, so we're looking at this, and it's a great bar, but it's really not it's not the ribbon that they wanted. So what we need to do is cut out this little corner. In order to do that, the book wants us to come over here and use the polygon tool. So that's going to be this one right here. The polygon tool, and I've said this last time, is it's a great one to kind of just create selection areas that are pretty straight. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to create the edge of our ribbon right here. And we're just going to click in the corner. So you're going to click in the middle, click in the other corner, and then close it off. And once you do that, it becomes marching ants. Now remember, so this is a selection, so now remember also that we are still on the ribbons layer. So there's a couple different ways to get rid of this piece. You can take your eraser tool and you can erase it, or you can just hit the delete tool and it will delete that. Once you're done, you just hit deselect. And there we go. We have a great little ribbon over here. All right, the next thing the book wants us to do is to work with the type tool. So as I've said before, we're going to stick on the ribbons layer. We're going to come over here. This is the type tool right here. And we're just going to use a horizontal type tool. It wants us to kind of pick some colors. So if you come over here to your swatches panel, it gives you some great swatches to start working with. And in this book, it wants you to go pastel, and it wants you to pick out the yellow. So that's what we're gonna do. So if we look at the type up here, we're gonna have yellow. I'm gonna go ahead and pick out a font. There's so many great ones to choose from. I'm just gonna choose that one. And for this project, I want you to write your name in here. So we're gonna just write our name. When we're done, you can just move it to where you want it to be. If you need to change it, by all means, jump in there and you can change it however you need to. Once you're done, you can either hit the check mark or you can hit a different tool. And there you have it. So we have our happy birthday with the name in there. Now the book will work through some more panels and some more great information, so I want you to take some time and really read through that. It's going to help you as you move forward. So the next thing that I want us to do is when you go to kind of hand this in, I want you to send me your working file and a JPEG. So I'm not sure how well Photoshop is going to bring in the working file, but I'd like to be able to see all of your panels. So when you save it, I want you to save it, go File, Save As, and I want you to put your last name, 01, your last name, and working. And then this is what you can upload as part of your project. Okay, so that's it for lesson 1. Make sure you go through all of the pieces and upload that, and this will be part of your grade.